Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. The Mercedes W14 is here and it's back in black for the 2023 season. Loads of news today on exactly what upgrades they've brought to this new version of the car, how it's going to help with the top end speeds, and also the downforce in addition to the weight reductions made possible by the carbon fiber body. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, on the verge of 15k. Here it is then, a beautiful livery must be said. I thought honestly they were going to keep it silver, to be honest. I said that they'd have to feel very confident this car's rather good to make it black, given the fact the last two black cars they had, 2020, 2021, the W11, arguably the best Formula 1 car of all time, and then another championship winner, arguably going to be a double championship winner in 2021 with the W12. So they went back to silver for the 13. Now they're back to black for the W14. The only thing missing here was either back to black by AC/DC, paint it black by the Rolling Stones, or something when they revealed the car. This is the comparison though. I think it looks fantastic, and it's significantly different to last year's version. The side pods are certainly more refined, I would argue. Like last year they do look kind of ugly. This year it's more of a fighter jet style really. But to be fair, the render we've got at the bottom here is not necessarily what's in reality, because the car they stood next to is not exactly the same as the one at the bottom of this image here. But just some early comparisons between the 13 and the 14, at least the 14 that we have seen so far. Only thing I'd change is the colour of George Russell's numbers, because Hamilton's yellow is nice and works well, but the green, I don't know. I think they should just use the Petronas blue or whatever they call it, Petronas green for Russell as well. But yeah, the car looks stunning. There's no longer this red Ineos thing at the top as well. That's now black because the vast majority of the car is not even painted. So this is the only element at the top of the car that is painted. The rest of it is just bare carbon exposed. Kind of funny really, because I mean, I appreciate also that Toto Wolff just said that yeah, we did this because it makes the car lighter. They weren't trying to pretend there was another reason. They wanted to save weight, therefore don't paint the car saves weight. I think people say that like an entirely painted car compared to an entirely non-painted car is about 5 kilograms worth of paint just on paint alone, which honestly is pretty significant. So if you half paint the car like this, you're probably saving about 2 to 3 kilos, which I mean, look, if that's 2 to 3 kilos you can save for free and not have to change other parts, that's pretty significant indeed. So other teams have been doing this, but Mercedes can be the ones to say, look, we're going to be the ones to do the black livery. No one else can copy us. And Toto Wolff said back in the day when the cars were more aluminium, they stripped the paint off and the cars were silver because they wanted to save weight. Doing the same thing now, but with carbon fiber, makes the cars black and obviously works for, well, heritage reasons as well from a few years ago. But you guys can see that this car they actually stood next to at the factory is not exactly the same as what we see in the renders, right? So this is where Hamilton says here, meet the W14. And this car, just parts of it, are a little bit different to what you see in the render footage. Some of the elements are a little bit different, so we'll have to see what they actually turn up with when we get to Bahrain testing, because last year the W13 that arrived in Bahrain testing was very different to the then no side pod concept they brought in for the actual Grand Prix weekends. And these really are the only two cars on the entire grid that have gone for a different format to what Red Bull are going for, right? We know that Red Bull are coming in with their design, and all the other teams pretty much on the grid have taken some degree of inspiration. And all the other teams on the grid pretty much have taken some degree of inspiration from the Red Bull, understandably so. Ferrari, though, have stuck to their concept, made some adjustments, some updates. Mercedes have stuck to their very different concept. So, you know, kind of interesting in a way that arguably what will be the top 3 teams will again have 3 radically different concepts, and the other 7 teams, we'll see how close they can get to the front runners, if even get amongst them. But, you know, they effectively have Red Bull clones in a way. Not exactly unexpected, but it's good to see some very different approaches remaining on the grid amongst what should be the top teams. So just some further images for you guys, because the livery is pretty stunning. Of course, a lot of it is just bare carbon, of course, but you know, it looks good. It's going to be pretty menacing on the track. You know, someone chasing you down on fresh soft tires in one of these is going to be looking pretty scary in the rear view mirrors, there's no doubt. Some just images of the updates here, comparing last year's side podless zero pod concept or whatever with what it's going to look like this year. This, of course, though, is the first edition they're bringing through. There will be updates, there will be changes. Toto Wolff even confirmed that this is what they're trying to run for Bahrain and the race at Bahrain, but going forward from there, they do have other ideas in mind. It's classic updates and development, but Mercedes have said this isn't the final design for the year. There will be updates to the side pods and elsewhere they want to bring. There were rumours even circulating a few days ago that they were delaying some of their manufacturing because they had new ideas and they wanted to go a different direction, and therefore some of the development development and the parts manufacturing got delayed, therefore they can't quite do with their starting car what they want to do with it. So, you know, look, it's expected they're going to start out the season not as the front runners. Red Bull or maybe Ferrari will be the favourite, as they were, of course, at the start of the season last year, but over time, a few races into the season, Mercedes should be there far quicker than they were last year. And just a kind of front-on comparison between what the side pods look like now to what they used to look like, and this, of course, is the W14 up top. And this just some more angles, because there's so many images going around that I thought I'd share what I could about some of the differences on some of these angles between the 2022 and the 2023 Mercedes. As I say, though, early days, things will change, but Toto Wolff did say this version of the W14 is pretty much what they're going to race in Bahrain. There will be changes, but last year they started out with a version that they changed radically at the start of the season. This year that's not going to be the case, but there are changes they are planning down the line. And as I said before, and still believe in a way, that I don't think they would necessarily have gone, you know, headfirst back into the black livery if they didn't believe that it really was going to be a solid car. Because, I mean, yeah, people expect the black cars to be fast as they were in 2020 and 2021. We'll see if that remains true this year. These are the statements from the engineers and the drivers themselves. And Mike Elliott here says that most of the development, or a lot of it, is under the floor. Of course, you can't see that part, but they also completely redesigned the front and rear suspension to help with the handling, and also potentially to help in a way with, well, how the car sits when it's flying at speed. Not flying, but, you know, the Formula 1 cars basically can fly if their wings were turned upside down. But in terms of the top end speed, right, and the lack of drag they're trying to reduce, also changes to the bodywork. So the DNA is the same in a way, but they're trying to resolve a lot of the issues. Hamilton comments and says, you know, the evolution has been fascinating. We've redesigned, optimized, innovated many parts. The livery says we mean business. A couple of other ideas here about, okay, the side pod design is still slim, based maybe in part on Red Bull. So they've taken some ideas from what Red Bull have done. Obviously, fundamentally, the car is the same as it was last time, but there are some changes. They've looked at Red Bull, they've looked at Ferrari, they've looked apparently at Alpine as well, in terms of some of the front wing designs, taken some inspiration, as of course all teams do. But yeah, these are all the technical comments we really have for the moment. Now, I wanted to mention what Hamilton says on this, actually, because he reckons that they've hit the nail on the head on the majority of things they're trying to deal with. Some of them, though, are far from guaranteed to be resolved already, and Hamilton reckons it might take a little bit further development to solve all the issues they had last year, but the straight line speed is still a key one of discussion.
But we believe we have hit the nail on the head in some of those areas, and some of them we'll still have to work on, but
So as he says, we won't truly know if we fixed our problems until we get in the car, but we believe we've hit the nail on the head on some of those areas. Some we'll still have to work on. So of course he knows what the engineers are telling him. They're saying, okay, we've solved X, Y, Z. You know, there might be an additional thing they've still got to figure out, but it's expected. They're starting from a starting point significantly behind where Red Bull and arguably Ferrari are as well. So they've got more distance, of course, to catch up. And that's going to be challenging at the start of the season. Should be achievable, though, over the course of this upcoming season. There's also been some discussion that they are intending to change their side pod concept at some point this year, probably early on. There's been some talking point even from Toto Wolff, who says here, like, look, this is our first iteration of the side pods. We're going through the first few races. It's going to change a bit. We're going to bring some other ideas. They've got, clearly they obviously looked at their car. Maybe they think, all right, we can improve this in certain areas. And there are some updates coming over the first few races of the season, just like McLaren have. But it seems like Mercedes are a bit more optimistic than McLaren are, despite the fact that Mercedes usually are downplaying their chances. And they're kind of doing that again this year. But, you know, obviously that is classic Mercedes and what they generally do. Wanted to discuss, though, here from Giuliano De Chessa and Formula Uno, the situation with the straight line speed of the W13. They were significantly behind last year where they'd want to be, about, you know, 12 kilometers an hour at times to the Red Bull. I remember back in Austin when it was down the second straight, when Verstappen was, I think it was 9/10 behind Hamilton going into the DRS zone, and he went for the overtake at the end of the straight. Like, that's an outrageous amount of time to catch over just one straight with DRS, but also with the straight line speed advantage that the Red Bull had last year. Now, that is a key problem for Mercedes to solve, because it basically ruins every single race weekend they did that wasn't at a high downforce track. At Mexico, high downforce, yes, long straight, but high downforce because of the altitude. But okay, Zandvoort, Spain also was a good track for them, Silverstone to a certain degree, and then Brazil. The majority of the circuits where they were long straights, they were getting destroyed. Part of this is down to the engine, in. And of course, first of all, the weight reduction is apparently worth 0.3 of a second. But in addition to the engine, apparently it's going to gain them about 0.2 of a second. And then some of the reworked design of the car, as well, is mentioned here in the tweet, the redesign of the front ends would suggest that the drag issue has now been addressed. And clearly, they've been working hard on this. Certainly, the article describes it as well, that it's very clear the engineers have worked closely to reduce the drag issue to catch up to where Red Bull and Ferrari are. Okay, Ferrari a bit faster, but Red Bull were way up the road in terms of straight line speeds. So I think that's probably one of the key parts they've worked on here, in addition to the engine getting better with a software update they've brought in, which is going to get them about 0.2 of a second. So yeah, definitely tweet your thoughts on this. We've got, obviously, you've got to add up the time. 0.3 apparently for the weight reduction, 0.2 just from the engine. Then, of course, you know, potentially their top speed advantages as well. You're talking about, you know, these add up quite a bit. And last year, they ended the season a few tenths off where Red Bull were. They were quite a way off in Abu Dhabi, but of course, you know, Brazil was very good for them just before that. So very much enjoy your thoughts on all this in the comments section below. What do you think about the W14? Will it resolve a lot of the issues the W13 had? Mercedes seem to believe it will, but they aren't being so confident yet that it's going to solve all their problems and that this season's going to be a slam dunk. Mercedes back to the top. I believe, though, they must be very confident to run this black livery again. It does give them some advantage in terms of easy weight saving. Their car will be right on the 798 figure for the start of the season, we believe. That's going to gain them a fair chunk of time compared to last year. The engine apparently is getting upgraded as well in terms of, well, software, pure performance, and the straight line speed is going in the right direction with potentially better downforce from the side pod package. We'll see over time, but you know, hopefully we are in for a very competitive season and a lovely livery as well. Just the Alpine still to go. We'll discuss that probably tomorrow, unless there's you know, other things to mention as well that might be more interesting, to be honest, than the Alpine launch. But hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.